How y'all doing?
What's up? I'm hanging.
Pretty good.
Growing up, what were your parents listening to? What were you all exposed to?
It's interesting. I think my dad listened to like a lot of 60s music, a lot of 70s music. He loved the Stones. He loved Bob Dylan, the Beatles. But when he was like, in his prime in like the 80s. And so it's kind of funny because, now I'm looking back at like the genres of the 80s and I'm into that stuff. And he was looking back at like the 60s. And so it's kind of like an interesting thing.
My dad's was into kind of like older rock and roll stuff, like, like the original like Chuck Berry kind of shit. But I think my brother was really my biggest sort of like musical influence on me early on. And he listened to like so much stuff. I got, like 2 walls of CDs from him, But it was a lot for me. Like what stuck was like a lot of like 80s punk, like hardcore, that kind of stuff. That was like kind of what really, the first stuff that I was like really checking out for my family.
My mom is from Fresno and she's into country music, which is very strange because it's also the Jewish side. And but she would like sing to me when I was falling asleep. So like I guess I don't know. I don't really mess with country music.
My mom's like kind of into, I think like 80s pop kind of stuff, like, well, I guess that's kind of like more R&B stuff. Like, I don't know. What do I remember? I guess like Shaka Khan was a big one. Yeah, I fucking love Shaka Khan. Yeah.
Looking at, the inspirations of being a musician, what was the first instrument that you admired and wanted to get a hold of? And what was the actual first instrument that you actually played?
I think I've always thought guitar was really cool. Like, I think that's a go-to, and like frontmen who are playing guitar. But I had the opportunity to play drums, and I played drums like my whole life, and I can't play anything else. And so like with this, doing like a solo project singing, it's definitely like a new experience for me. And, it's definitely kind of crazy, like being up there fronting instead of being behind the drum kit. Like it's kind of unnatural and I'm like don't really know what to do sometimes. But I played in, I've been in Aaron's bands and other bands on the drums, and but I always wanted to play guitar.
We're the exact opposite. The first instrument I wanted to play, I went over to my friend's house and his brother was taking a drum lesson. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I went home and I talked to my parents and I was like, can I learn drums? And they were like, fucking no. So I learned bass. Bass is my first instrument. I like my middle school had like this jazz band, so I was playing jazz and some rock, and then picked up guitar and singing and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where I started.
So including now, what is your favorite musical time period?
I feel like that's changed throughout my life. I feel like right now it would be the 80s. Just like post-punk, that movement is so... There's so much expression and it's so dark, and I feel like the reason there's been such a resurgence is because like the world has been so screwed up lately, and I feel like people really relate to that period of music and what those people are trying to say. But I've definitely been into like 60s music really heavily before, and 90s music, and I mean I love what's going on right now too, for sure.
Me, I got on like streaming, and like the internet is huge for me, like just the exposure that you can have as a listener to music is like so... You can get anything you want, like in the 90s, like you had to dig for that stuff, like back in the day, like music, like the music scenes and the creative scenes were so much more, I don't know, there's still some sort of like regionalization and segmentation in it, but now I feel like it's like way less, whereas, like in the 80s, like I said, I was super into hardcore punk, but back then, like the East Coast scene was totally different than the West Coast scene, like the Misfits and the Suicidal Tendencies had like, I don't know, it was kind of the same mood and, you know, like instruments and all that kind of stuff. It was a totally different approach. And I mean, that's just one country, you know, take that global and, you know, you can get so much from so many places.
When it comes to performing, what is your favorite part of that whole experience?
I think it's wholly like the community for me, and like honestly the performing itself like scares the shit out of me like a lot of the time, you know what I mean? And so just like that community and the connection you have with those people, and gathering for that performance. Before I was sober, like I didn't really have, like I didn't connect to people on that level, and just to like clear-minded be able to like have connections to other human beings in like a meaningful way around music, it's really powerful to me. But yeah, the you know, I'm no like Gigi Allen, like I'm not gonna like roll in glass. I'm probably just gonna like sway up there, you know what I mean? But so I don't get like super like hype into the performance, but I do like that part too when I get into it.
I like the chaos. I like the chaos. I've been playing music for a long time, and like I've played jazz for a long time, and part of that is improv, and like I mean that's so much of it. I love that about performing live, is just like not knowing, you know, like what's gonna happen, and it just puts me in the moment like that in a way that you're forced to, because you're on stage, and you know, like there's no getting out of it. It's hard to achieve that state of presence of mind, and you know, like being present in other contexts for me. So that's what I love about performing.